the problem that worries me is that you guys are not getting any adequate directions. You're told to teach economics, and when you look to see what economics is, it's a lot of graphs. It's an average cost curve that falls down like this and then rises up here, and a marginal cost curve that goes through it. And, and when you teach macroeconomics, there's 45-degree lines and lines. And, you can teach this effectively if you can scare the students. But I don't think this stuff empowers. And I feel sorry for anybody who has to teach it. I also feel sorry for anybody who has to teach it at the college level. But it seems to me at the high school level, it's much more difficult to teach this stuff. And I don't think it should be taught. Now, what should be taught? Now, I realize you're under constraints, but I'm going to talk about the ideal world. I can do what I want to, because I'm old enough. I keep changing my course, and it's pretty much getting pretty close to getting to be what I want to do. But let me tell you what I want to do and what I want an economics course to do. I want an economics course to explain to my students how the world works. And I say the world, not the economy, because it seems, well, I should say the world, I should say the social world, how the social world works, the world of human interactions. In particular, the world of impersonal interactions. You see, a family, my wife, my kids, when they lived at home, there weren't any mysteries about how we interacted. There were problems, but there weren't mysteries. We could understand it. How do we decide who takes the garbage out? Well, you know, you just make a decision. How do we decide who gets the extra piece of pie? You know, we make those decisions. Families, personal face-to-face societies can operate in a way that's sort of transparent. It's not saying they work well, but impersonal societies, or what Adam Smith called a commercial society, these are different. These are mysterious. We live in a society, well, let me give you Adam Smith's definition of a commercial society. It comes at the beginning of chapter 4 of book 1 of The Wealth of Nations. He says, when the division of labor has extended itself throughout the society, everyone lives by exchanging. Everyone becomes, in some measure, a merchant. And the society grows to be what is properly a commercial society. Now, that's our society. None of us can survive on our own. We are dependent upon millions of other people. We interact in a highly complex system that none of us controls and that really is rather mysterious. And my goal in teaching economics is to help students understand these impersonal, essentially impersonal interactions that enable me to get to school on the bus, that enable me to find a little gewgaw in the hardware store when I want a gewgaw, that enable me to purchase antibiotics that saved my life, that enable me to fly down here. It's just amazing when you stop to think about it. I'm going to be home tonight in Seattle, which is 2,000 miles from here. Think of all of the people who are getting ready at this moment to transport me. It's a miracle, and I don't even know them. And if they knew me, they wouldn't like me. All right, now why is it important that people understand this? It's not so that you can get rich. I really don't believe that understanding economics in this sense, understanding how markets work, because that's what I'm talking about, helps you get rich. It doesn't hurt, but that's not the reason. The real reason people should learn it is because it makes them better citizens. They understand how the society works, and consequently, they cast better votes. They don't demand all sorts of things they shouldn't be demanding. Now, the problem here is that nobody's got an incentive to study it for this reason. You see, why should I spend my time understanding how the society works? We say, so that I cast an intelligent vote. But my vote is 1 among 100 million. I'd rather go bowling. So that's not an effective incentive with students. You know, that's boring students. Now, you must learn this so that you will be a good citizen. You know, you want to teach economics because an understanding of how this complicated society works empowers you. It overcomes impotence. I don't mean the kind of impotence that your students will mean if you use this phrase, but when you are, you often hear people say, I don't know how they can get away with that. Or I was walking out of a movie the other day with my wife, who's tried to get an understanding of economics, but always keeps falling short again, largely because of her left-wing political prejudices. But we came out of the theater on a Sunday afternoon where we had, and got into our car to drive back home, and we saw the hotel across the street, and it reminded her of something. It says, it really makes me mad that hotel charges you $10 if you're a guest there to park your car. She said, the theater lets you in for free, and the motel's part lets you park for free, but this downtown hotel charges you $10 a day to park your car, and that really makes me mad. And I had never thought about it, but I began thinking about it, and right away I started telling stories to myself, and then began telling them to her that explained to her why it was that, I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it, why the motel does it. Motels get all of their customers, almost all of their customers, in the form of motorists. Downtown hotels, probably the majority of their customers fly in, so they don't have cars. In addition, of course, the motels are out in the suburbs where land is a lot cheaper. But if the downtown hotel tried to provide free parking for all of its customers, it would be providing a service that most of them had no use for and that was very costly to provide. So what they do, in effect, is just sell it to those who want it. You think, well, that's why do some places provide breakfast with the room and others not? You get the same kind of words. But then she comes back. She says, oh, you always explain everything. I love my wife. She's great. In fact, even the kids, grown kids now have learned that when we get into these arguments, we're really having fun. We're the best of buddies. But she says, you always explain everything. But the theater's right downtown across the street, and they let us park free. And I stopped, and I thought, and I figured out why. Why do they do it? Well, because they get their customers, the people who drive cars down there, come down either at night or on Sundays when the parking garages are completely free and empty. So they've worked out a deal, right? Now, these are stories. I tell stories to my wife that make what she observes plausible. And if I can persuade her, if I can tell her a good story, she no longer feels mad or frustrated, or, I can't understand how this world, who is the guy who stuck his head out the window? I'm mad and I won't take it anymore. Yeah. I think there are a lot of people who are just, they're frustrated, mad at the world, because we live in a highly complex social system that none of us controls, and unfortunately that most of us don't understand. And I want to teach economics so that day by day my students understand something. So every day there should be one or two cases where people say, aha, ha, I see. That's what I'm after above everything else. Immediate, short-term gratification. The students grin and they, okay, now what kinds of, what kinds of mysteries? I'm trying to resolve mysteries, puzzles. That's what I'm after. And I just wrote these down this morning in the back of the room to show you the kind of thing. I've got another one here, and I'm just going to, oops, I thought they would fit, not quite. Well, I'm just going to rattle through these with no comments, and then we'll come back to anything you want to come back to. And these are now the kinds of questions that I will put up on the overhead projector. I get them all nicely typed. I won't put something down there like spontaneous order. What I did was I wrote out the questions this morning, and then I wrote in the principle that I'm trying to illustrate here. I'll put these questions up, and I'll make my students write about them. I have my students do a lot of in-class writing, and sometimes put them in small groups to discuss them. Sometimes we'll have large group discussions, handle them in a variety of ways. But I'm constantly putting questions at my students, and I tell them, what's going on here? Tell me what's going on. And I want them to tell stories. I say, your task is to tell a plausible story. So that first one, I'll just to illustrate that first one, it's taken from the statement of the dean of the divinity school at the University of Chicago, who made the statement that we can eliminate poverty. Poverty continues to exist in the United States because we have chosen not to eliminate it despite our ability to do so. And I asked them, is this true? Can we eliminate poverty? And I want them to tell stories about how we would eliminate poverty, what would happen if we did this, did that, what would we do, and so on. There's the rest of it. If disposable diapers are clogging our solid waste landfills, should we prohibit their sale? That's actually the way I handle this one is I give them 3 options. I say, let's pretend. You know, the disposable diaper problem has sort of disappeared. I'm sorry. But a few years ago, there was enormous anxiety about disposable diapers. That anxiety has disappeared. Politically, I'm glad, but pedagogically, I'm sorry that we've solved the solid waste landfill problem because it was such a good example. But what I'm trying to get them into here is to recognize that the principle of rationing by money price. Okay, and the next, why do we seem so much busier, so much more pressed for time than our grandparents who had so many fewer time and labor-saving devices? Why did food rot in the fields of Russia in 1989 and 1990 despite the empty shelves in the grocery stores? Should we expect a large reduction in real property taxes to lead to lower rents? Proposition 13 in California was sold to the people of California largely on the grounds that if they voted for a huge reduction in property taxes, rents would go down because property taxes are a large cost to the landlord of renting out the property. This one you may recognize. If meat eaters, that's been the world, let's see, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and a variety of peace and justice groups have made the claim that meat eaters consume indirectly 5 times as much grain as people who eat grain directly, you know, because of the waste when you run it through the cow. And the question is then, do meat eaters cause malnutrition among poor people? By consuming so much grain, they bid up the price of grain, okay? Then which is more valuable, water or diamonds? The old Adam Smith paradox. Here is some more. Why do airlines give such huge discounts to passengers only if they stay over a Saturday night? That used to be a good one. People are beginning to learn the answer now. I've had some funny answers to that one over the years. There's actually one person who thought that it was just a part of the general conspiracy against religion. They were trying to get people to stay out over Saturday nights so they wouldn't go to church on Sunday. Why don't the telephone companies charge customers per local call as they do with long distance calls? You know, you don't, some do. Well, I've heard of some, you have that option, but they usually don't. They usually don't. They offer you a deal. The general deal is you pay for the phone for the month and you make all the calls you want, but long distance calls, they charge you per call. What difference does it make whether an enterprise in the former USSR is owned by the state or owned by 2 million individual shareholders? Yeah, that's a tough one. I spent a lot of time on a question like that. I was almost jotted this one down, but I didn't. I would say, what would happen if we sold all the public schools to the highest bidder? I didn't want to introduce that in a group of teachers. But that would be a fun one. What would happen? Just take your school. A.A. Milne, who's it? Are you an A.A.? No, who's an A.A. Milne? Somebody. All right, I don't care what. Peabody Junior High, okay. What would happen if the school district sold Peabody Junior High to the highest bidder? You sold it to them, it's theirs. I mean, you can do what you want, just like a dry cleaning establishment, okay. If driving in Los Angeles were shown to produce toxins that lowered the life expectancy of Los Angelinos by 10 years, would Los Angelinos stop driving their cars? I think the answer is no. And why not? Some people say, well, if you just tell them, if people knew about the health hazards that they're inflicting on themselves, they would stop driving. Not so, not so. And then the last, what happens if employers are required by law to pay, required by law to pay, it's not the last one, pay wage rates for different jobs that reflect the inherent comparable worth of the job. You know, the whole comparable worth movement, or something that's called pay equity. And then why did OPEC succeed in the 1970s and collapse in the 1980s? All right, these are puzzles that I wrote down in 30 minutes down there, but of course I've had a long experience with puzzles. And I just was going through what I think some of the basic concepts of economics and putting these down. Now, what do I do with them? What I do is put the students to work answering them. Obviously not all of these. This is a quarter's work here. But I'll just begin with, would you like to begin with one? Let's try it out. Pick one. You remember anyone you like? Choose one. Huh? That's one wasn't up there. All right, let's take the school one. All right, let's take the school one. Okay. Now, I use the overhead projector a lot, and I get it all typed up in big print. And what would happen if Peabody Junior High were sold to the highest bidder? And with this one, I think I would put the students in groups. I teach classes. I may be teaching a class of 400. I will be teaching a class of 400. And the grade distribution is determined. Then I tack on the bonus points. But that gets them working. What I want them to do is predict consequences. Okay, now we're small. Let's start predicting consequences. Sometimes I will do these things in class. And I'll just start writing the stuff on the screen. Okay, what would happen? And here we go. And I say, let's not argue about this stuff. What do you think would happen? Okay, what would happen if Peabody Junior High was sold to the highest bidder? Who would buy it? Maybe the first question. But what do you think? What would happen, huh? What? Parents would buy. Anybody think somebody else would buy? Companies would buy. Business corporations would buy. Okay. Churches. These would be the bidders. Okay. Who would be the bidders? Okay, that's what we're working on. Churches would buy or try to buy. Okay. Okay, ethnic groups. Oops, ethic. That's bad. Ethic groups. Ethnic groups. Okay. Would try to buy. I am genuinely surprised here about one group that has not been mentioned. Yeah, right? Don't you think? No money. All right. Okay, there we go. Somebody says teachers will buy. No money? Do people who don't have any money ever buy anything? How do they get it? They borrow. Do ethnic groups have a lot of money? Do parents have a lot of money? Business corporations have a lot of money. Why would business corporations even be interested in buying Peabody Junior High? Turn a profit? How could they profit from the schools? Look, the schools are losing money now like crazy. A corporation is going to buy Peabody Junior High. Let's play. It's in Houston. Who's going to? I want to try this one out. Let's just work on this class for a little while. We're going to focus. They're buying the school. So you can't buy the students. We got the 13th Amendment. No, it's not stock. Students can go away. You buy the building. You buy the building and all of that. It helps to explain why business firms aren't terribly interested in providing education for their employees, or why they will only do so when they can sort of guarantee themselves that the employee will stick around and work with them for a while, and that's not going to work with kids. Well, let's go back then to running the schools for profit. I mean, as a child school, yeah, as a child school.
A private school business might be interested in it, but a
regular business wouldn't. Yeah, and in fact, if a business took it over, who would they hire to run it?
They would interview and talk to people who have been principals or teachers from other schools and hire those people.
Okay.
They're going to want the best people to run that school.
Okay, I want each of you, I like that. I want each of you to imagine now that you're the chief executive officer of Compaq, and you've decided you're diversifying, you're investing in a lot of different things, and you've decided you're investing in schools, and you're going to do so to make money. Is there money to be made in schools? Well, you say to yourself, schools provide a valuable service for which people ought to be willing to pay. I think this service can be provided in such a way that it generates a revenue in excess of costs. All right. So you're going to have to worry about revenue. Now, I don't want to get into the whole, this is an issue I think that you would have to come around to eventually, but because it's so politically charged and fraught with so much misunderstanding, I would like to push that off to the side. But you're going to have to come to it because, see, what I'm trying to get, what I would be trying to get my students to do here is recognize that maybe the principles of free enterprise can apply to schools. Now, one of the principles of free enterprise is there has to be a market where people are choosing and evaluating the product. The reason that the grocery store serves me well is because I control the money in my pocket, and if they don't, I went with my mother the other day into a big drugstore in Seattle, and she was looking for a hairnet, but they didn't have any that matched the gray in her hair. And here's this woman who doesn't know her from Eve, I was going to say Adam, but doesn't know her from Eve, who said, I think I can get some, I'll order some. And she took down my mother's name and my phone number, because she's visiting, and was going to call within 2 days. And she looked very carefully at her hair and tried to, amazing service, this woman doesn't even know my mother. But that's because my mother controls some money, and this woman now, but you know, when you go into the post office, well, I don't know if you laugh, but I have this experience that when I go to the post office near the university, when the line gets so long that it's outside the door, they close one of the windows. Whereas in the QFC, the Quality Food Corporation store, grocery store that I patronize, as soon as there are more than 2 people in line, they get on the microphone and say, Chris, would you check? Why? Well, see, it's not just because we control the money, competition, but the post office is in competition too. But there's no, I'm running way ahead, I would never get into this right now, but your teachers, there's no residual claimant at the post office. In other words, if the university district postal station gets a reputation for serving people quickly and well, who will benefit? Nobody in the university district postal station, except they'll probably have to work harder. But if somebody owned the university district postal station, somebody would be the residual claimant. They would get what's left over. And they would have an incentive to get good employees, recognizing you can always get better employees by paying more, but you don't want to pay more. You want to get good employees without paying too much, so you're taking account of productivity as well as wage. You'd also want to provide better service, but you can always provide better service by incurring higher costs. You want to provide just as much additional service as people are willing to pay for. You're taking everything into account. You might start serving coffee and donuts when people are waiting in line at Christmas time. But I think these are the things that would happen if somebody owns Peabody Junior High. What I hear you saying is that if we move to a system of privately owned schools, those schools are going to do a good job of providing services to bright kids and to parents who are highly motivated and want to get their kids into Harvard. Parents will get, will there be any schools that specialize in disabled kids? If the market's right. If the state, and then you start thinking about how much the state now pays for special education programs, if we channel some of that money to the parents of disabled kids, entrepreneurs will, if you build it, no, if you give them the money, they will build it. Okay, let me, just one other thing before we leave this, and I admit I'm letting my interest in telling stories give way here to my interest in school reform. I think that the answer to the problem of the schools today is to put the schools under the control of one person. Each school is run by an entrepreneur who makes a go of it or gets sacked. And that entrepreneur selects collegial teachers. Because I think a good school is a school that is run by collegial professionals. That means teachers, but not managed by the teachers. Teachers aren't managers, but it's run. You know the other teachers in your schools. And the only people who can really provide good professional services and monitor them are professionals. Doctors have to monitor doctors. Teachers have to monitor teachers. What we have to do is set up school systems where teachers have an incentive in directly monitoring one another's behavior, which means strengthening the weak and chastising the wayward, and realizing that we're in this together. And you know, I became interested in school reform some years ago. I've been actively interested politically because I was concerned about the quality of education for our schools, and I have shifted. I'm now interested in reforming the schools because I think that schools are demoralizing our teachers. And I see these young people, these young students of mine whom I love, going into schools, and I tremble. How long will they last as they face the pressure from a school district? Obstreperous parents, obnoxious students, principals who are interested simply in how many forms you can fill out, and taxpayers and teachers are under an enormous set of conflicting pressures, and the one thing you dare not do is devote your life to teaching, because you'll be destroyed. Now, that's terrible, but I think that would change if we set up a system of entrepreneurial schools. Well, Candace? Okay, I accept almost anything. Let me go back to this list. And again, I'll remind you, you can pick up from Greg a copy of the talk I gave last year on teaching economics by telling stories and get a better sense of, probably than you'll get from this, of what I'm trying to do. But see, let me just take now one of these problems very quickly. If disposable diapers are clogging our solid waste landfills, should we prohibit their sale? I give the students actually 3 options, and I say, you're in Congress, and we're worried about the solid waste landfills getting full of diapers, and you got to choose one of 3 options. Ban their sale, perhaps prohibit the manufacture and sale of disposable diapers. Charge people for putting disposable diapers and other waste. I mean, you can't have a disposable diaper patrol going around to see what's in your garbage can, but you just charge people by volume for disposable waste. Or put a tax on the sale of disposable diapers. And they choose one and explain why they want it. And then we talk about it. And I ask people here to read what they've written. And you'll get things like, I'd say, how many of you want to ban them absolutely? And a whole bunch of hands will go up. These will tend to be environmental purists. And you know, what happens then, I usually switch then to, if I have a mother in the class. And I say, now, so the only way to make sure no disposable diapers get in the solid waste landfills is to ban them. Somebody says, well, then there'll be just black market disposable diapers. And we entertain that. Some people, the students will generally agree it's going to be very difficult to operate a secret disposable diaper factory. There probably won't be black market. So if we ban them, they'll disappear. But I say, but is that such a great good? Aren't disposable diapers useful? And then some of these environmental purists will say, no, there's cloth diapers. They're good substitutes. Cloth diapers are excellent substitutes. I say, under all circumstances. And then I look around say, are there any mothers here? And then the mothers begin supplying some additional information, and they tell stories about babies taken on trips or taken downtown to the department store and so on, or babies overnight who have diaper rashes, and somebody may talk about child care centers that are worried about infection spreading through them. And so what the students begin to see is that we have to make trade-offs. And now the question is, so we do want to use disposable diapers. We want to use them when they're very, very valuable. The marginal principle is getting in here. So what we should do is proclaim, okay, everybody, let's all be good citizens. Let's only use disposable diapers when they're very, very valuable to us. And the rest of the time we'll use cloth diapers. Will people cooperate? No. So why don't we just charge them a high price? And then I'll get the other kind of sort of knee-jerk reaction. Say, then poor people won't be able to buy disposable diapers. And sometimes, you get the same person. Their left brain wants to ban the disposable diaper, and their right brain wants to make them freely available to the poor. But this is, I just think that getting people to recognize that disposable diapers can be very, very valuable, or only slightly valuable, is an enormous accomplishment. They begin to see that why demand curves slope downward to the right. They begin to see that it's marginal valuations that are the relevant valuations. And then, of course, this question about which is more valuable, water or diamonds? Which is more valuable, water or diamonds? Water? Water? Baloney. You don't need water. What?
If you define value by price, the diamond is because it's rarer.
Okay, look, I'll give you people a choice. I'll give you people a choice. You can have either a bucket of water or a bucket of diamonds.
I'll take the diamonds.
You'll all take the diamonds. How can you then say that water is more valuable than diamonds?
Are you saying it's you can have one or the other?
It depends on the situation. It depends upon what margin you're on. If you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert,
Then I'll take the
water. If you're in Houston, diamonds are more valuable than water. Diamonds are more valuable than water. It's not just that their price is higher. Their price is higher because they are more valuable. People place higher value on them. And you get, it's the margin that counts. People say, but you die without water. Yes, and if you were on that margin, you would pay all your diamonds for water, but you're not on that margin. So you see, so we get into all kinds of silly policies here. Notice how this has immediate policy implications. We refuse to ration water by price in California, for example, because water is a necessity of life. So the average Californian consumes something like 100 gallons of water per day, uses 100 gallons of water per day, living in a desert. How much of that do they drink? They grow rice in California. You know that, don't you? In the Sacramento region, they grow rice. Why? Because water is cheap. People, if water is cheap, people use it until it has no value. Water has almost no value. By proof, watch the way people use it. They use it, they hose down the sidewalk. The trouble is water has an enormous range of substitutes. Another little game I play, I tell students, let's come up with substitutes for water. And people come up with ordinary substitutes. And then I say, now let's come up with some wild substitutes for water. My favorite is a baseball bat. Well, okay, substitute for water on the right margin. Kids are outside. They're having fun. They're squirting themselves with a hose. You stick your head out the door and say, don't do that. We're in the midst of a drought. You're wasting water. Kids say, oh, it's boring. What will we do? You say, take this bat and ball. Go play ball. Is a bat a substitute for water? On the right margin, it is. Rocks are a substitute for water. You can put rocks on your front yard and you don't have to grow grass. When the price goes up, people find substitutes. When the price goes down, people substitute these things for lots of other stuff. All right, now, I'm going to have to quit. What I want you economics teachers to do is to, if you possibly can, emancipate yourself from the college professors who are telling you to teach all these rigorous models that illuminate nothing, certainly not with high school students. And teach economics to explain to the students how the world works. Now, you're going to have to understand yourself how the world works. So you've got to learn some economics. And now, I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it. I think that, I mentioned Algene and Allen this morning, but I think my textbook is really good for this. Has anybody here ever read, do you know the book at all?
I've used it. Yeah.
You've used it. I'm not recommending that you use it in high school, although some high schools do. What I'm suggesting is that if you can get a hold of a copy of it, it's got a lot of examples. The ends of the chapters are full of real-worldish questions. And though the publisher, no, it's not. There was one copy in Roger Miner's, no, there was one copy of the 7th edition and Roger Miners took it. Yeah, there are no copies here. It's expensive. It's a textbook. And you know, that's another question. Why do textbooks cost so much more than trade books? Well, it has to do with the elasticity of demand, but that's another little story I tell. And then students are fascinated when I reveal the ins and outs of the publishing business and why I'm so rich. But if you can get a copy of it, the publisher will not send you the answers to the end of chapter questions for discussion, because they reserve that for people who have adopted the book. But if you write to me, I will send you answers to those questions. So each chapter has scads of questions at the end, and I have answered all those questions or provided suggestions. And they appear on 65 pages of small print, single space, which I will send you at my expense if you write me and say you'd like it. Publisher is Prentice Hall. The book currently is bearing a Macmillan imprint because Prentice Hall and Macmillan got merged. Prentice Hall and Macmillan are now part of Simon & Schuster, which is part of Paramount, which is part of Viacom. I never know to whom my body belongs, but you can contact Prentice Hall and get a copy of the book. But I do think, and I'm understandably, well, maybe not, I'm reluctant to tout my own wares, but I do think that, I know that this book is used in a lot of centers for economic education to help high school teachers get a sense of what economics is really about and what it's good for. The title is The Economic Way of Thinking. The Economic Way of Thinking. And it's full of stories. But it's probably easier to get it from Center for Economic Education or local Prentice Hall rep or something like that. But there were none of these questions up here that you needed the answer to desperately. You all know why OPEC lasted for the 80s, why OPEC lasted through the 70s. I'll bet you don't. It's going to be on the test.